So, hey, it's been a while. You folks doing well? I hope so. I know you're probably wondering, where's Zero, right? Because the last devlog was... when was it? Oh! Yeah. There's a reason for that, but we'll get to that later. The purpose of this video is to recap the project up until this point and my future plans for it. We'll call it Keely's State of the Project. But before we get into that, today's video is sponsored by Babbel. Babbel is a premium subscription-based language learning platform available in 14 languages and developed by over 150 expert linguists. Babbel's teaching method has been scientifically proven to help people engage in basic conversation after just 3 weeks of daily practice. Yep, you heard me right, just 3 weeks of daily practice. They also offer a variety of ways to learn, including lessons, podcasts, games, videos, content, articles, and live online classes. I'm currently learning Spanish in preparation for a trip later this year, and the way it's organized really keeps me on track. It's super easy to get started. Once you sign up, you select one of 14 languages, and then take a small quiz to determine your current level. After that, Babbel will customize your lessons to fit your level. They also provide you with a learning plan as well as metrics to track your progress and goals. They even allow you to set your target skill level with that language, as well as how much time you like to spend per day doing lessons. But wait, there's more. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist saying that. Anyway, use my link in the description to get up to 60% off a lifetime subscription, and if you're not satisfied, they offer a 20-day money-back guarantee. So go ahead and start learning a new language in just 3 weeks with Babbel. And thanks again to Babbel for sponsoring this video. Okay, so let's start from the top. Movement. Zero's able to walk, run, and sprint. He's also able to jump, but unlike in the original games, once he jumps, he has to commit to that direction. This is something I think I'll change in the future to give the player a bit more control. Zero is also able to vault over obstacles, climb walls, and run. The vaulting needs to be smoothed out a bit, as well as the wall climb, and sometimes this happens. I also need to tweak the camera position for the wall run, as well as handling the direction that Zero jumps off of it. Actually, the camera needs a bit of work altogether. Zero can also dash. Movement hasn't been worked on since adding these things originally, so some updates are much needed. The combat in this project is what has been receiving the most attention. It takes inspiration from DMC, PSO2, Kingdom Hearts, and Metal Gear Rising. My goal is to make sure it's flashy, functional, and most importantly, fun. The first weapon added was the Z-Saber. This is currently his primary weapon, and all of his special attacks are tied to it. Speaking of special attacks, he currently has the Ryujin, Hyoretsusan, Kyuinbu, Raijingeki, and Hayate. Ryujin is Zero's launcher and allows him to perform air attacks. If used in the air, it spikes the enemy toward the ground. Hyoretsusan is an AoE attack that pops enemies into the air. If used in the air, it turns into a slam attack that drags enemies downward. Kyuinbu is a spinning attack that hits multiple times, works the same in the air. Raijingeki is a piercing attack, which also works the same in the air. And finally, Hayate. Zero sends out a clone that slices through enemies. Zero also has his sub weapons, and the first of these is the Buster. This can be used in an over-the-shoulder firing mode or locked on. He can also charge the shot. Zero can also swap back and forth between the Saber and the Buster in a combo. Next is the Shield Boomerang. This allows Zero to perform a parry counterattack, which could be converted into a full combo. The shield can also be thrown and circles around Zero before returning to him. The triple rod needs a bit of work right now, as it's the only sub weapon that doesn't have any special features outside of attacking. The idea for it now is for it to pierce enemy defenses, but I wanted to give it something to make it a bit flashier. The recoil rod allows for rapid attacks, and it's focused around air combat. They also allow Zero to air dash, which can be used for follow-up attacks in the air. The chain rod was a pain to set up initially, but I'm happy with how it turned out. It does wide attacks that can hit multiple enemies, and it can also be used to latch on to enemies and go in for a follow-up attack. In the future, I want to add the ability for Zero to use the chain rod for movement like in the original games. Finally, there's the Z-Knuckle. I set this up as its own self-contained weapon. It has its own special attacks, the Hadouken, Shoryuken, and Tatsumaki. And just like in the original games, it can be used to steal weapons from enemies. A bunch of these have already been added, and I go more in depth in the previous devlog. I'll be adding more once I start adding enemies to this project. Some other things added are slicing an enemy when they're defeated like in the OG games, Blade mode from Metal Gear Rising, and the shot lock from Kingdom Hearts. So, what's next for the project? Right now, the goal is to clean up the existing mechanics, specifically the movement. I'm pretty happy with the feel of the combat, but there are still a few bugs that need to be handled. Something else that I'm considering is the chip system from the OG games that allows Zero to change the elements of his attacks. But this will require some extra work because the existing special attacks would need to be tweaked to have each element. Once all of this is done, I'll move on to enemies and then the levels. The UI also needs a lot of work, and I'm thinking of changing the way the player cycles between sub-weapons, or maybe adding a loadout system altogether. As for enemies, I'm pretty much limited to using assets from Mega Man X Dive, which means that I'll be adding enemies from multiple Mega Man games, not just the Zero games. The bosses that I know I'll definitely be adding are Hapuria, Leviathan, Copy X, and Omega. Finally, I want to give Zero access to his Mythos form. This is a version of Zero that was only used as the cover art on a remastered official soundtrack. I already have an idea as far as how I want Zero to fight in this form. I just need to either find a 3D model of it or modify the existing one enough to resemble it. And that's the current state of the project. Like I mentioned earlier, I had to step away for a little bit because I was starting to feel burnt out on working on this and only this. Moving forward, I'm going to be working on other smaller projects where I explore other what-if scenarios between devlogs for this one. I'll also be going live here and or on TikTok to show progress for this project whenever I add something new. So yeah, big updates coming soon for this project. And also thank you to Babbel for sponsoring this video. If you want to try out the current build for this project, you can find it over on my Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, big shout out to my patrons. You all are the real MVPs. And like I said, I have some other devlogs coming in addition to devlogs for this one, so stay tuned. But that's gonna be it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And if you're feeling super generous and want to see more projects like this one, how about subscribing? I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.